Brothers, how you doing? And the occasional sister too. Been a while since I did a bro check video, and it's just because I'm busy. You're probably busy too, so thanks for your time. New Zealand has the highest rate of wasps in the world. Like, we've got all these invasive species and different ones, and I know all about them. The last 2 weeks I've done a couple of personal challenges, one which is already on my other channel, which was to go away with pretty much nothing and try and catch fish and survive, and I ticked that one off. And then I thought I'd challenge myself more and go away with absolutely nothing man-made. That means I would make a Kentucky raft or a boat or something I could catch fish with. I'd make my own hooks, I'd make my own line, and I'd build my own hut to stay in, and I really stuffed up. So my first night was an absolute disaster. First night I got stung by wasps, bloody paper wasps, while I was foraging for food, and I had no antihistamine with me, so I used plantain for that. That's a plant that grows, which was pretty bloody average at stopping the pain. Had a sleepless night. The weather turned shit. I got washed out of where I was staying. What I should have done was I should have built a shelter first. What I did was I was staying in the previous shelter, which just was a few passion fruit vines with some leaves over top, but that wasn't waterproof. And I come home in the early hours of the morning with wasp stings, no sleep. I'd built I won't say what I built, because I built something which I'll show later on, because I'm going to revisit that video. But anyway, I failed. But I don't believe in failure, because I learned a valuable lesson. And I should have known better. The weather had been so good, I thought I'll build my shelter the next day, but the weather came a day soon. Mother Nature threw everything at me she could to tell me, Clay, you're gonna fucking pay some. We're gonna deal some shit to you. We're gonna inflict stings on you, and we're gonna wash you out. We're gonna make you sleep deprivated, and we're gonna make you rethink. And it was a horrible experience, but I took something from it. And one of the things was, it was a sharp reminder to me that nature will win every time over us. We think we can go out, and because I had such a successful trip the previous trip, I thought I'll do it again. I was all enthusiastic, and I got smashed. So I really got run down too after that. I got a herpes come up my lip because I have that virus in my system. Remember, I don't get to sleep, and the sting kept me awake for a couple of nights. I actually got multiple stings. My leg's still sore. So anyway, this is not what the video is about. I just wanted to bring you up to speed, because I haven't been here for a while, and tell you what's going on. I'm back on form now, as you can probably tell. My energy's good. I'm back to 1 meal a day and pumping out long days. Got up at 5 this morning and started on a rabbit hunting video, where I hunt and feed myself and my dogs. Started doing that at 5 in the morning, smashed half of that out by 7. Did all my kitchen chores, cleaned the kitchen, cleaned the floor, did my washing, did all the stuff that often us men aren't very good at doing, and I'm shit at doing it, but I got it out of the way. And then I went down and did some work on the houseboat, which now is out of the water. But what the video was actually going to go to, and where it's going to, is while I was doing all this, I was thinking of something about my mindset that makes me different to some people. Not everybody, some of you will be the same, and it's something very pivotal that happened to me when I was about 4 or 5 years of age. I think I just turned 5. So we've got to go back 53 years ago, or 53 years ago. Here I was, this young boy, tiny little boy, and I was living in the Abel Tasman National Park. It's the top of the South Island, New Zealand, in a place called Totaranui, and my father was the ranger there. Dad was a strong man. He was a man he was Mr. Nelson, or Mr. Tahuna. He did bodybuilding, but he also did wrestling, and he did boxing. He was previously a marine engineer and a fitter and turner, so he had a lot of skills, and now he'd become a ranger. And he could just about make and do anything. And to a 5-year-old boy, I really looked up at him as being the most amazing human on the whole planet. And I still have that respect for him today. He was an incredibly good man at building things, at going into the wild, and he could make anything to survive. He wasn't a fantastic father, and later on in years he admitted that to me, but he had a hard upbringing himself, and I understood that, and we made our peace with each other when I was in my 30s, and we're good friends today. Now, what happened on this particular day was a pivotal thing for my whole entire life, and my life has been quite different to everybody else's life, and it's one thing that happened to me at the age of 5. And I want to share it with you because it will be of some gain to you and of some value to you in your own thinking of things that happen along your journey. And it goes like this. I was down by the sea and I was catching kahuai with my little fishing line, my little budget fishing line that I got for Christmas, and those days it was fish were plentiful and you could catch anything. And I noticed a piece of wood floating on the water. It was a piece of clatty, or flaxwood as it's also known as, and it seemed like a piece of balsa wood. It was bobbing up and down on the top of the water, and I thought that floats much higher than other wood. It doesn't look like a normal piece of wood the way it floats. It bobs up and down, it looks very light. And I got to thinking when I was looking at it, I wonder if I could make a little boat out of it, because it floats so well. And I'd seen these Kontiki rafts that the tourists, every Christmas, the tourists would come to Tochanui and they'd camp on the beach, and they have these Kontiki rafts made out of plastic, and they'd have a barley sugar, and the barley sugar would go in the water and they would go out to sea, they'd blow out to sea, and then the barley sugar eventually would melt, it would drop the long line down, and these guys would catch fish. And I thought, I wonder if I could make a Kontiki raft using this flaxwood. Little did I know that had already been done by Māori and lots of Pacific Island people. They'd already investigated that, but it was my thinking and I'd never seen it. And I got really excited about this, making this Kontiki raft. So on my way home, there were some campers, and there was one guy that used to camp each year, and he had the fastest boat. It had like it was called Tiger, and it had a big black outboard on the back of it. And I can remember it was like 160 horsepower Mercury on the back. And he used to take his boat right up the beach, come flying into the beach and lift his outboard up at the last minute and drive up the beach on his boat. And everybody used to love this boat, and it used to roar like Tiger. And he was the man because he had this boat. It was a black boat. And he had a mate that was staying with him this time, an older guy. And as I was walking home, I had my piece of flaxwood, and this man said to me, "What do you got there, son?" And I said, "Oh, it's a piece of flaxwood. I'm going to make a Kontiki raft out of it." And he goes, "Oh, you can't do that, it'll break." And I said, "Why will it break?" He said, "Oh, it's too light. No, you need something stronger than that. Wasting your time." And I felt disheartened, and straight away I was like, oh, fuck. He's probably right, he's an adult, he'll know. So I started walking, and I thought, I wonder if he's tried to make one out of it. So I'd gone quite far away, and I went all the way back to him, and I remember shaking his sleeve, and I said, "Oh, sorry, have you tried to make a Kontiki raft using this flaxwood?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Well, how do you know that it won't work?" "Oh, it just won't. It's too light. It's flimsy. It'll break." I said, "Oh, okay." Now, as I walked home, this is the pivotal moment. I was walking home, and this is a child's logic. I thought, well, if he's never ever made a Kontiki raft out of clatty, out of flaxwood, if he's never tried to, then how does he know it doesn't work? Where's he getting his information from? I'm going to make one anyway, even though he says it can't be made. I'm going to make one anyway. Well, I went home and I had this pocket knife my granddad gave me. It was real cool. It had an old vintage car on the side of it. One end opened up a wee small blade, and the other opened up quite a long blade. And I started carving two little canoes, and I joined them together, and I tied them up. And I thought about him saying it'll fall apart. So what I did was I put a piece of muku, or that's the name, muka, sorry, not muku. Muka's the name for rope made out of flax. And I'd learnt that through correspondence lessons. That was one of the lessons. We learnt a lot of bushcraft back then. I did correspondence lessons, and we learnt a lot of things about the bush, because back then we lived in the bush pretty much. We had no power, we had a generator, and Mum used to cook everything on a coal range. And the little bit of power we had was for keeping our fridge going. I don't think we ever cooked on an electric stove. Didn't have a washing machine. Oh, we got one later on as time went on. I remember we got an agitator washing machine. But anyway, I made this really, really tight with the muka, and I made my sail out of flax, because my mum had already taught me how to make a mat out of flax, and that was my sail. And I remember taking it to my dad, because I knew my dad would know, and I said, "Dad, I've been told this is not going to work. Is it going to work?" And he looked at it and he said, "Son, it's not going to work because it's going to tip over." And I said, "Oh yeah." He was in the workshop at the time. He was actually sharpening some tools, some slashes, because he used to maintain the tracks. And I said, "Well, how do I stop it tipping over?" And he said, "You need ballast, son." And he looked at how I constructed it, and I said, "A man said it'll all fall to bits." He says, no, this won't fall to bits unless it's a really big wind or it gets caught in the surf. You've built it strong, but it needs ballast." I said, "What's ballast?" and he took out a piece of lead, and he said, you're going to drive a stick through the hull, and you're going to put your lead on the end of it. And he quickly made up a piece of wood with a lead, and I remember him hammering it on the wood. It was actually a piece of down, and he poked it through on each side. So I had 2 sticks going down underwater on each side of, I guess you could call them like canoes. They weren't canoes, I suppose they were pontoons, or what do you want to say. That was the flaxwood. And he put one on each side, and he made it so the lead was sharp, and he carved the piece of wood going down the dowling so that would also cut through the water very, very quickly. Dad was like a very practical man. I mean, he's built boats and everything, and I was watching my father, and I was amazed. I was like, oh, this is so cool. And to a 5-year-old child, this is magic stuff going on. This is like, whoa, doors are opening. I'm getting all this information flooded to me, and all the time I'm thinking, and I'm being told it can't be done. I'll fucking show you. I'll show you, mate. And I remember going down. I hadn't even got my fishing line sorted up yet. All I had was just a piece of string, and I let it go in the lagoon, and it went beautifully, sailed to the other side. And I thought, this can take fishing line out to sea. This can work. And all I needed was a barley sugar. And so my granddad used to come and see us, and he always had barley sugar in his car, and I still feel guilty to this day. I can remember sneaking into his Valiant. He had a Regal Valiant. He was staying with us for the holidays while this was all going on. He'd come over, and he was there with my gran for another couple of weeks. They'd come to stay, and I can remember stealing out of the glove box these barley sugars like it was the worst crime in the world. I don't know why I didn't ask him, because he would have given them. He's a great granddad. But I took these barley sugars out, and some were for me to chew on, and the rest were for my Kentucky raft. I knew how they worked because I'd seen the guys do it. I went back to my dad and I said, I've got this, I want to take it out. And he said, oh, you'll need a backing line for that, son. And I said, oh, yep. And he says, yeah, we've got a bit of that, a bit of old backing line. So he gave me that. In those days, we didn't have the flash circle hooks, we just had normal hooks. And I put half a dozen hooks on 6 hooks and set it up with a weight to drop and my barley sugar. And I've set it all up so the barley sugar was in the water so it would drop it, and got down to the beach, and the guy that told me I couldn't do it was down there. And I remember thinking, he better be around and watch this fail, because I want to really show him. I want to show him I could do this. And he looked at me and saw what I'd made as I went past. I made sure he saw it. I was walking past there, and he looked at me, and again he's like, what do you got there, boy? I said, it's my Kentucky raft. It's made out of flaxwood, and it's going to work. He just laughed at me. He was like, yeah. And I could see that he was interested, but trying to pretend that he wasn't. I could tell he was. And I said, come on down and we'll put it in the water now. He goes, nah, you're wasting your time. Some people are just negatively geared like that. You've met them, you know who they are. Wasting your time. I said to him, well, my dad reckons it'll work. And he goes, well, who's your dad, son? I said, well, he's the ranger here. And that sort of quietened him down a little bit, because my dad was pretty well respected. So I just give way to some traffic. Sorry, the guy gave me the evilest look just then. I don't know why I gave way to him. Some people are just not fucking happy, are they? So we're down there at the water, and there was a bit of a surf that day, like more than that was ideal. The bloody Kentucky raft got tipped over in the bloody surf and snapped one of the fucking supports. And I remember just having my whole hopes dashed. I had all my barley sugar, and I had the line and everything ready, and I was going to go, I told you so, and it fucking failed. And so I picked it all up, and I was crying. I can remember how upset I was. I mean, I can still remember like it was the day. I was absolutely heartbroken. And the worst part about it was I had to walk past the guy next to the boat, the Tiger, with it all broken. And I was walking past him, and he looked at me, and he goes, told you so, wasting your time. And I just fucking, that really, really fired me up. I thought, I'm not giving up yet. So I went back home and tied it up. I actually replaced the bit that had broken. It was one of the struts had broken. Tied it up, and Dad said, what's the matter, son? Because I was crying. I told him, I'm fucking broken the surf. And he says, well, you don't go out the bloody middle of the day, son. You go in the morning when there's no wind. You're wasting your time going out in the middle of the day. And I said, well, I got told I was wasting my time by him, and now you're telling me I'm wasting my time. He said, well, you were wasting your time. You go out in the morning. I said, well, no one told me. 5-year-olds, our emotions are pretty thin. Actually, come to think of that, I think our emotions are always thin. We just hide it as we get older. Anyway, Next morning, I got up super early. I was super excited, and Mum made me porridge with cream and brown sugar. And I remember having that for morning, and I was excited, and I'd had my craft. It was all ready. And I got some fresh bait off Dad. And I went down there super early, and the bloke who was camping out was still in bed. Like, I wanted to show him I fixed it, I'm going to do it again. I went down there, and there was a nice offshore breeze. It wasn't blowing that hard offshore. So we should get an offshore breeze probably till about midday. And I thought that the stronger the wind was, the better, because it would be like getting it out. But actually, you just wanted a light offshore breeze. And by midday, normally the offshore breeze had gone, or just after, like 1 o'clock then. From I don't know what the time was, I can't remember. But I remember the previous time I'd done it and it failed, it was sort of side and it was choppy, and that's why it got stuffed up. So here was this nice, quiet offshore breeze, perfect. My granddad, actually, he had told me that, and I hadn't really listened to him. He was a clever granddad. So we get down there in the morning, and it's just a quiet offshore breeze, and there's nobody's up. It's just sun's coming up. It's absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I put it in the water, and I put my baits on as it went out with my barley sugar, and I watched it go out, and everything was perfect. There was nothing going wrong. Everything was perfect, and I was afraid that something was going to go wrong, because I'd never done it before. Well, I had, but I'd failed because I'd put it out when it was choppy. And the offshore breeze was probably about 5 or 6 knots, enough to just take it out, and it just went beautifully out, and I was feeding the string out. And as it went out, I noticed, like after only about probably 5 minutes, I noticed it rocking up and down. I thought, what's that? What I didn't know is a fish had already taken the bait on the way out, and it was a kahawai, and it was already caught. I was trying to catch whatever I could, and I was, what's that? And I couldn't rationale in my little brain that I already had a fish on. And as it was going out, then I started to feel a fish biting, and I knew what that was. I've got fish on. And like, it's like early in the morning, and it's only been out for probably 15 minutes, and I thought, well, I'll wait till all 6 hooks are filled up. And by now, the odd camper was getting up and putting their boat out to go fishing. And one of the guys that was doing it was the guy that had the boat, the Tiger. And there was his mate, the other guy, who was Mr. Negative. And he was like looking at me over there and like, what are you doing, son? And I said, can you just not go too close to my Kentucky raft, because it's out there catching fish? He went, yeah. And I said, no, it is. And I wanted to keep it out a bit longer, but I thought, no. Actually, while they're launching, I'm going to pull it in. I know there's fish on there. I don't expect there's going to be 6 fish on there, but I know at least I got 1, possibly 2. So I started pulling it in, only because he was watching me, pulling it in, and they were getting their boat launched. And I suddenly felt the weight, once I'd taken the slack up, was pulling it, of actually how much fish it had on it. Like, it was fucking heavy for a 5-year-old boy. And I had snapper on there. I had snapper. And back in the day, we used to have a lot of blue cod, cherokee, gurnard, all those fish around there. But I had snapper and kahawai. That's what I caught on there. And I was pulling it up. And all 6 hooks all had a fish on. And I was pulling it in. And the other guy there on the boat, the Tiger, who never said anything, he come on over to have a look. And then a few other campers started, because I was like, woohoo! I used to get so I still do, get so overexcited in my fishing. It's one thing I've never been able to control, and I know it upsets my girlfriend. She's Japanese. She goes, quiet, you're too excited, she always said. Look, honey, I can't fucking help it. I'm still the same today. It's never changed. It comes from being a little kid fishing when I was a little boy, and I always get excited. I just haven't been able to tame that part of myself, and I'm giving up trying. I'm not going to fucking try. So anyway, I'm like getting woohoo, and I'm like this. You can imagine a little kid. I'm getting hyped now just remembering how it was. So I'm bringing these fish in, and the guy that owns the Tiger, he comes over, and he's like, oh, well done, fella, well done, that's awesome. And the other guy sort of standing in the background trying not to say anything, and I've got all fish on the beach, and the campers are coming down helping me, and they're pulling them up, and fucking six fish in probably 20 minutes. Back then in those days, fish were prolific. I mean, you caught a lot of fish, and big ones too, although these were probably, looking back, probably pan-sized fish. So I've got them all on the beach now. My Kentucky raft is still good. The lolly, or the thing which drops the line, the barley sugar, it hasn't even dropped the line. It's only been out there, because it takes half an hour for that melt. It's caught fish without even dropping it. So I'm ready to rebait and put it back out again and use the same barley sugar. It's only like half melted. And now finally the guy that told me that it couldn't be done comes over and looks at it and goes, huh. And I looked up and I said, you told me it wouldn't work. And he looked down and he goes, well, I didn't think it would. And I said, you told me that it would all fall apart. And he said, well, it did fall apart yesterday. And I said, yeah, that's because I put it out in too much waves and too much wind. I put it out midday when the offshore breeze was switching to onshore, and it got blown out and it got blown sideways, and then it got caught in the waves, and that was my mistake. I didn't know that. And he goes, And I said, I listened to my dad, and he told me to go out the next day and put it out early in the morning when the offshore breeze was firm and going in one direction, not getting all mixed up, and there wasn't going to be waves. So I listened to my dad, and I put ballast on it. He goes, what's ballast? And I said, ballast is this. And I picked it up and showed him. I said, that's what ballast. So now I was showing someone who told me it couldn't be done, something that he didn't even know. And he eventually was pretty good about it. Oh, eventually he shook his head. And then he said, well done, son. And he buggered off. Well, that well done, son, that sealed it for me. That fucking sealed it. That well done, son, what that said to me is, don't take what other people say when you say you're going to do something. Don't take any notice of it. Completely ignore it. In fact, just store it in your head and go, I'll fucking show you. And secondly, when you do something that is, and it succeeds and it brings you value and something, then share it with everybody. Share it with everybody. Say, hey, this can be done. We can do this. I know I've done it. If one man can do it, another man can do it. I've done it. So I take that from that lesson. So for the rest of my life, I did all sorts of things. When I was like a sales rep working for Frost Wholesalers in Christchurch, I said to my boss, I'm going to Europe to make a living out of music. He says, can't be done. Not everybody can be a Beatle. Not everybody can be an Elvis. I said, I don't want to be a Beatle or Elvis. I don't want to be famous. I just want to make music and make a living. He says, look, mate, stick to your knitting. You're a good salesman. You won't, it's not going to work out. And I said the same thing to you. Have you ever done it? Have you ever tried? Well, he goes, of course I have. I'm not a musician. I said, then you don't know, do you? So, and I've applied it to my life all along. Same when I told my father I'm going to become a YouTuber 7 or 8 years ago. Dad was, son, it's very, very difficult to make a living out of that. Lucky for me, a bunch of good bastards got around me and made it possible. But point of the whole video, and we're going to tie it up, is that don't ever let anybody tell you what you can do and can't do. My entire life has been doing my own thing, not going along with all the rest of the sheep. Be yourself. Be yourself. And remind yourself, if one man can do it, then you can do it. If another man can do it, you can do it. Or another woman for that matter. So whenever I'm in a really tight situation, like I was the other night with those wasp stings on my leg and I was really struggling, I thought, I can't handle this anymore. I'm in pain. I can't sleep. I'm exhausted. I feel sick. I was actually sweating because I was in such a bad state. I thought, I'm not giving up on this. I'm going to return to the shore. Next time I'm going to build a hut. I'm going to catch fish. I'm going to do it all with nothing man-made, because I know that Māori used to come here and live on the coast, and they didn't have steel. They didn't have fish hooks. They did everything from what was around. So it keeps me always believing that I can do something. Even though you may suffer and get knocked down, you get back up. Your dreams will come true if you pursue them and keep on doing them. Telling you guys about this is really, for me, has really flared me up. I can feel myself really quite amped, because it takes me back to a pivotal time in my life as a child where I learnt a very valuable lesson, that you can just about do anything if you don't listen to the critics. By all means, take the things that have gone wrong for other people and apply them so you don't get hurt, or you can learn from other people's mistakes, but also don't give up on yourself just because someone says you can't do it. You're always going to come across, I still get it all the time. I get a lot of I've had a lot of negative stuff on my as being a YouTuber for years. These days is less and less. Since I'm doing a little bit less hunting content, it doesn't bring out the haters as much. But still, I come up against it. So good luck. Good luck doing your own thing, following your own goals and making them happen. I hope this has been of some use to you guys. I really wanted to share that story. I probably could have made it a lot shorter than it was, but when I started telling it, I started to remember little things that came back to me that sort of got me sparked up and quite excited about the whole thing and how it went. I'll never forget it. It's magic to me. Check on yourself. Check on a brother. Go steady. And I'm just heading into Repco right now to put some oil into my old boat. Did I get the engine going? Have to wait and see. See you later.